The dam that never stopped changing. The concrete that refused to stay still. Imagine building something so massive that even after 90 years, it still isn't finished. Deep within the walls of one of America's greatest engineering achievements, millions of tiny chemical reactions are still taking place. The concrete is still changing, still maturing, still becoming stronger than it was on the day it was completed. But this wasn't supposed to be the story. The impossible challenge. In the early 1930s, America faced one of the greatest engineering challenges in its history. The Colorado River was powerful, unpredictable, and destructive. Every year, floods threatened communities downstream. At the same time, the rapidly growing American Southwest desperately needed electricity and water. Engineers believed they had the answer: build the largest concrete dam the world had ever seen. But before construction even began, another problem appeared, and this one came from the concrete itself. The hidden enemy. Most people think concrete simply dries. It doesn't. The moment water is mixed with cement, a chemical reaction begins. Scientists call this process hydration. As the reaction spreads through the concrete, it releases enormous amounts of heat. Normally, that's not a problem. A sidewalk, a driveway, even an ordinary building can release that heat into the air. But Hoover Dam was anything but ordinary. A disaster waiting to happen at its base. Hoover Dam is nearly 660 feet thick. That's wider than 2 football fields placed end to end. Engineers quickly realized something terrifying. Heat trapped inside the center of the dam had nowhere to go. If they simply poured all the concrete at once, the inside would remain dangerously hot for decades. As the structure slowly cooled, different parts of the dam would shrink at different speeds, and that could create enormous cracks capable of threatening the entire project. The Countdown government engineers ran the numbers. The results were shocking. If they relied on nature alone, Hoover Dam would take more than a century to cool completely. More than 125 years. Construction would grind to a halt. Costs would explode. And the dream of controlling the Colorado River could collapse before it was ever completed. The project needed an entirely new solution, one that had never been attempted on this scale. So engineers made a decision that sounded almost impossible. They were going to build a giant refrigerator inside the dam itself. The impossible cooling system. The clock was ticking. Engineers now faced an impossible choice. They could let nature take its course and wait more than a century for the concrete to cool, or they could find a way to control something no one had ever controlled on this scale: time. Because every day construction slowed, the project became more expensive, and the Colorado River wouldn't wait, breaking a giant into pieces. The first breakthrough came from a surprisingly simple idea. Instead of pouring the dam as one enormous block, engineers would build it like a giant puzzle, or perhaps like a massive set of building blocks. Hoover Dam would be divided into 215 individual concrete blocks. Each block would be poured in layers only 5 feet deep. After each layer, workers waited before pouring the next. This allowed some of the trapped heat to escape, but it still wasn't enough. The heat that refused to leave. Even with the dam divided into hundreds of sections, the problem remained. Deep inside each block, temperatures continued to rise. The concrete was becoming hotter, faster than it could cool. If nothing changed, the center of every block would stay dangerously warm for decades. The engineers had solved part of the problem, but the biggest challenge was still buried inside the concrete. Building a giant refrigerator. Then someone proposed an idea so ambitious, it sounded almost impossible. What if, instead of waiting for the concrete to cool naturally, they cooled it themselves? As each section of the dam was poured, workers embedded 582 miles of steel pipes throughout the concrete, hidden forever inside the structure. A massive refrigeration plant built nearby pumped ice-cold water through every one of those pipes. Day after day, the system pulled heat out of the concrete, long before nature ever could, and engineering first. At the height of construction, the refrigeration plant produced nearly 1,000 tons of ice every single day. Cold water circulated continuously through the hidden pipe network. Slowly, temperatures dropped, the concrete contracted safely, and one by one, each section became stable enough for the next stage of construction. It was one of the largest artificial cooling systems the world had ever seen. The pipes that never left, but once each block reached the correct temperature, the cooling system had one final job. The steel pipes were no longer needed. Engineers filled them with a thin cement mixture called grout. The empty channels became part of the dam itself, permanently sealed inside millions of tons of concrete. Even today, those hidden pipes remain exactly where workers placed them nearly 90 years ago, invisible to every visitor standing above. The cooling system solved a problem many believed was impossible, but it also created something unexpected. Hoover Dam didn't simply survive. It became one of the strongest concrete structures ever built, and decades later, scientists would discover that the story wasn't over, because hidden inside the concrete, the chemistry was still at work. The concrete that is still changing by 1935. Hoover Dam stood complete, millions of tons of concrete, rising from the floor of Black Canyon. To the world, the project was finished, but deep inside its walls, another process had only just begun, a process that continues to this day. Concrete doesn't dry. Most people think concrete hardens because it dries in the sun. That's a common misconception. Concrete gains its strength through chemistry. When cement and water are mixed, they begin forming microscopic crystals. These crystals spread through the concrete, locking everything together into an incredibly strong structure. Scientists call this process hydration, and unlike paint drying, hydration doesn't suddenly stop. A structure that keeps maturing. During the first days and weeks, this chemical reaction happens rapidly, but inside a structure as enormous as Hoover Dam, tiny amounts of unreacted cement can remain for decades. Whenever moisture reaches those particles, hydration can continue. The reaction becomes slower, much slower, but it doesn't simply switch off. That's one reason engineers sometimes describe massive concrete structures as continuing to mature, long after construction ends. What engineers found? Decades after Hoover Dam was completed, engineers wanted to know how well it had survived. They drilled deep into the concrete, removing core samples from inside the dam. The results were remarkable. The concrete remained in excellent condition. Tests showed it had developed exceptional strength over time, not because the dam was somehow rebuilding itself, but because the long-term chemical changes inside the concrete had continued exactly as engineers expected. Strong, but not indestructible. Does this mean Hoover Dam will continue getting stronger forever? No. The increase in strength slows dramatically as the years pass. Every structure has limits: time, weather, erosion, and changing environmental conditions all affect concrete. That's why engineers continue to inspect Hoover Dam using modern instruments, carefully monitoring movement, temperature, and structural health. Great engineering isn't just about building something remarkable. It's about making sure it remains safe for generations. A living piece of engineering. In many ways, Hoover Dam is unlike most buildings. It isn't alive, but it isn't completely static either. Deep within its concrete, chemical reactions continue at an incredibly slow pace, invisible, silent, yet still shaping one of the greatest engineering projects in American history. But the story of Hoover Dam isn't measured only by chemistry. Its true scale is almost impossible to imagine. The amount of concrete, the weight, the force of the Colorado River, every number seems unbelievable. And once you see those numbers, you'll understand why Hoover Dam remains one of the greatest engineering achievements ever built. The numbers that defy belief. Bigger than anyone had built. Standing on top of Hoover Dam, it's difficult to understand its true size. Photographs flatten it. Videos rarely capture its scale. But the numbers tell a different story. Every measurement pushes the limits of what seemed possible in the 1930s. A river of concrete building. Hoover Dam required an almost unimaginable amount of material. The dam itself contains approximately 3.25 million cubic yards of concrete. Another 1 million cubic yards were used for the power plant, spillways, and surrounding structures. Altogether, that's more than 4 million cubic yards of concrete. Numbers like that are hard to picture. So here's another way to imagine it. If all that concrete were poured into a standard 2-lane highway, 16 feet wide, it could stretch from San Francisco all the way to New York City, heavier than imagination. Once completed, Hoover Dam weighed approximately 6.6 million tons. That enormous weight wasn't just a result of construction, it was the engineering solution. Hoover Dam is known as a gravity dam. It doesn't rely on cables or moving parts to resist the Colorado River. Instead, it uses its own incredible mass. Every ton pushes downward into the bedrock, helping the dam resist the force of the water behind it. The force of a river. At the base of Hoover Dam, the pressure from the water reaches extraordinary levels, roughly 45,000 pounds per square foot. That's an immense force pressing against the structure every second of every day. Yet for nearly a century, the dam has continued to do exactly what it was designed to do: hold the river back, a lake that changed the earth. But Hoover Dam didn't just stop a river, it created Lake Mead. For decades, it was the largest artificial reservoir in the world. The amount of water stored behind the dam was so enormous that scientists observed something unexpected. As the reservoir filled, the tremendous weight of the water added stress to the Earth's crust. The region experienced numerous small earthquakes, a phenomenon known as reservoir-induced seismicity. These were generally minor events, but they demonstrated just how dramatically humans had reshaped the landscape. Building a new America Hoover Dam wasn't simply an engineering achievement, it was a symbol. Construction began during the Great Depression, when millions of Americans were struggling to find work. More than 21,000 men worked on the project over its construction. Entire families moved to the desert. A new community, Boulder City, was built to house the workers. For many, Hoover Dam represented something larger than concrete. It represented hope, transition to the final chapter. Nearly 90 years later, Hoover Dam still generates clean electricity, controls floods, and delivers water across the American Southwest. Millions depend on it, often without realizing the extraordinary story hidden inside its walls. A story that reminds us that the greatest engineering achievements are never just about concrete and steel. They're about human imagination. The legacy of Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam was built to stop floods, store water, and generate electricity. It accomplished all of those goals. But over time, it became something even greater. It became proof that engineering can reshape an entire region and improve millions of lives. Powering the American Southwest. Every second, water rushing through the dam spins massive turbines hidden deep inside the power plant. That movement is transformed into electricity, powering homes, schools, hospitals, and businesses across the American Southwest. Today, Hoover Dam continues to provide hydroelectric power to parts of Nevada, Arizona, and California. It also plays a critical role in managing water for millions of people who depend on the Colorado River. Engineering that outlived its builders. Every worker who poured concrete, installed steel pipes, or stood on these canyon walls is now part of history. Yet the structure they built continues to perform the job they designed it for nearly a century ago. Few engineering projects remain this important for so long. Fewer still continue to be studied by engineers around the world. A monument to human ingenuity, Hoover Dam reminds us that great engineering is rarely about building the biggest structure. It's about solving the biggest problems. The engineers who designed this dam weren't trying to create a monument. They were trying to solve impossible challenges. How do you control one of America's most unpredictable rivers? How do you pour millions of tons of concrete without destroying the structure from the inside? How do you build something that generations will still rely on? Their answers changed engineering forever. The final reflection. Millions of visitors cross Hoover Dam every year. Most admire its size. Some appreciate its history. But very few realize that hidden deep inside those massive concrete walls, the same chemical process that began in the 1930s has never completely stopped. It continues quietly, unseen by everyone standing above. It's a reminder that the world's greatest engineering achievements don't simply survive the passage of time, they become part of it. Nearly 90 years ago, thousands of workers stood in this canyon with little more than determination, mathematics, and an idea that many believed was impossible. Today, their work still holds back a river, powers cities, and stands as one of the greatest engineering achievements in modern history. Not because it defied the laws of nature, but because it understood them. And perhaps that's the true secret of Hoover Dam. It wasn't built to fight nature. It was built by working with it. Every great structure has a story, but some stories are still unfolding. If you enjoy exploring the mysteries, engineering, and forgotten history that shaped our world, subscribe to Hellhound. Because our next journey begins where another mystery is waiting to be uncovered.